Hello, listeners. Been wondering how you can help the show? Probably not. But here are 5 things you can do. 1. Subscribe. Support the show by clicking the subscription link in the show notes. 2. Review on iTunes, on our website, www.afraidofnothingpodcast.com, or on whatever app you listen to. 3. Donate. When you go to our website, click the cute coffee cup icon. Or in the show notes, click the subscription link. 4. Share. Sharing really is caring. Tell your friends and even your enemies to check out the show. 5. Watch. Wait a minute, it's a podcast, not a movie. Actually, it's both. Check the show notes to find out where to watch the documentary. You can also rent it on Prime Video. That's it. Oh, one last thing. Enjoy this episode. Welcome. It's Bob Heskey, and this is episode 19. Today we bring back the Andy Grant, Energy Healer, and I thought it was timely to bring Andy back because the last time we spoke, which is episode 6, which is about 3-4 months ago, well, as you all know, a lot has happened. So I decided to bring back Andy and talk about his feelings and perceptions as an energy healer with his clients and himself and over these past few months. And then in the second half of the show, we do something very different as well. Andy gives me an Akashic Records reading. So stay tuned and enjoy the show.
In a world where nothing is known, nothing is certain, reality is not real. Wake up! Be afraid of nothing. I'm Bob Heskey. Robert.
The host with the ghost.
This is my podcast, based on my paranormal documentary, Afraid of Nothing. Each episode, we talk to people who see life and the afterlife through a different lens. Join me.
Who is this large man? And what's he doing in our bedroom?
As we lift the veil and open our minds to see beyond our eyes lie. This is Afraid of Nothing.
All right. Welcome to Andy Grant 2, the Andy Grant 2. Andy was on episode 6, and he's back on episode 19. Andy is a best-selling author, speaker, transformational energy coach, Akashic Records reader, healer, and is the founder of Real Men Feel, a movement encouraging men to come out of the emotional closet. Andy has been producing and hosting the Real Men Feel podcast since February 2016. Andy, welcome to the show. Not a lot has happened the past few months, has it?
Yeah, no, nothing at all. Very, very calm period.
I know. It's like, I really should call this podcast Afraid of 2020. And I think that's what I'm going to call this episode, quite frankly. So tell us, the past couple of months, you're an energy healer. Mm-hmm. And I'm just curious, how have you been helping your clients the past couple of months, and even yourself, keeping yourself sane during this time? Because I'm sure you pick up on a lot of bad energy, and you got to kind of put a balance to it so you can be sane.
Yeah, COVID was one thing, and that was pretty cool. It wasn't really hurting me. I didn't have a lot of fear. And tuning in and meditating and talking to other people that are, even higher in the modern mystery school than I am, there was not this sense of this is the end of mankind. This is not the prophesized, virus that will just take out humanity. It was nothing like that. It was more how I looked at it was, this virus was the ultimate reflection on humanity. We're distant from each other. We're separate. We're isolated. We don't communicate well. We don't come together. So here was this virus that says, yeah, now you have to physically separate, right? The physical world was mirroring how we are energetically and emotionally. So what I encouraged people to do was that you have this gift of time. Most people, if you were laid off or working from home, you had this gift of time. So what are you going to do with it? Are you going to just Netflix all day, day after day, day after day? Are you going to go inward? Are you going to examine what the fears that this brings up? Are there economic fears, health fears, concerns for your family? It was really an opportunity to dig into that. And we were doing, me and other members from the Modern Mystery School were doing remote healings for people that were in the hospital. We were offering healings and energy treatments for first-line workers all around the planet. And this was really an amazing global thing. Everyone was brought together for this one thing. We're all facing the same issue at the same time, which it's happened before to the planet, but never with the level of communication and instantaneous communication that we have today. Then,
Right. Sorry, I was going to.
then it gets even elevated with the race relations, the protests, the rioting, the looting, whichever word you want to take to focus on it. For the first week of that, I was crying every day. And that was just my own empathy and mourning and just feeling this pain, this frustration, this sadness. And for a while, I thought I had to do my part and really monitor the news and watch the protests in every city and be on top of it. And after 3 days of burning out on that, I was like, no, this is not helping. This is not helping at all. And so I've done on my podcast, Real Men Feel, about a month ago, I did, before George Floyd was murdered, I did a podcast following the Ahmaud Arbery shooting when that tape finally came out and that became a viral sensation.
Yep.
I invited 3 past African-American guests from the show back, and we had a panel. And I just called it Being Black in America. And I asked them all, tell me, what does it mean? What am I missing? What don't I know? And I was horrified to discover the level of fear each of them lived with every day of their life, all in different parts of the country. Like, it wasn't just a Southern thing. It wasn't just a hood thing, right? These are all, one's a doctor, one's a doula, one's an entrepreneur. These were not, drug dealers and gangsters. This was solid American citizens that feared for their life every day. And it just broke my heart. And I was more upset and grieving, and with my position of white privilege, mourning the nation that I thought I lived in. Like, I was finally made clear to me that we are not as good as I thought we were, right?
Did you feel like it kind of had blinders on and it was just kind of lifted up after that?
Yeah.
And I would imagine, by the way, after that interview, my other question is, did you reach back post the George Floyd murder to talk to them, or did you just kind of email and have any communication with them?
No, so it was before that even happened that I had this panel. Then when Mr. Floyd was murdered, I reached out to someone I didn't know. I had just been connected with a black man on Facebook, and someone suggested he was a great guest for me in the future. And I said, I haven't talked to you. You don't know me. Are you willing to just go live right now and talk about this? And we were both in tears, just sharing how we felt and the shock of this. And, I've been asked as a white person, like, why didn't I care before this? And it always just seemed far away. And to me, this was very different because I saw someone get murdered in broad daylight in the street, surrounded by people saying, "You're killing him. Stop."
Yeah, awful.
Right? It just felt different. Just the fact, the brutality of it, and the response that it's gone global. Right? I feel, I was going to say you were joking. Maybe you weren't joking about this being just a horrible year, but I think the light is being shined on things that we resisted and ignored and were in denial about for a long time. That's what I think is different. Energetically, it feels different. I think real change is coming. We're going through the dark night of the soul as a country, as a nation, and even as a planet as this spreads across. And when I was growing up, it was America, love it. So is that for some people? America, love it or leave it. If you're a patriot, means we've never done wrong. As I went to college and learned the truth about American history, and we are a stolen country, and our economy was built on slavery. So it is systemic, and it's nobody's fault today, but it's up to us to try to address it and to fix it. So I see that 2020 is really about power, the results, the after effects of power coming home to roost. And what are we going to do with it? And how does power get corrected? How does it get readjusted? How can we have compassion for all humans, regardless of race, regardless of what country you're in? Because we're the human race. We shouldn't have racism. We're one race.
I thought a couple of years ago, when that tragedy on the Boston Marathon Patriots Day, that was probably the worst tragedy on a holiday, and this just blows that out of the water. I mean, you talk about, awakening. For years, people have been talking about humanity having a race consciousness and an awakening. Do you think it's that part of the human journey?
Yes, I really do. So for a long time, 2021 is supposed to be a big year. Like, the energy's coming in to support our future, and, it's all the kumbaya, it's the age of Aquarius, all this stuff we've heard about for decades, which meant that all the darkness right? Everything in the way of a bright future is showing up and attempting to be cleared now. So it's really about what are we going to do with this when all the things you've denied, with all the shadow of ourselves, an individual, and now it's come collective, and again, the soul of the nation, we're forced to look at it and say, nope, nothing's wrong, right? Or just even like pre-COVID, nope, we're going back to normal. I want smog-filled cities, and I want pollution and factories just churning away. Or wait a minute, can I work from home? How many jobs? We reevaluating. Well, like, who are the essential people? Wow, they're truck drivers, they're restaurant workers. Wow, who would have thought that, right? It's forced us all to change our thinking. And the Black Lives Matter protest is challenging us to change our actions and our government and our systems. Something I've gotten from the Akashic Records for years, which used to really scare me as a depressed and suicidal person, was that I was going to be alive when all of our systems collapse.
Really? Wow.
Economy, judicial, governmental. And I've talked to a lot of people that say they see Trump as the last president. Like,
oh, God.
Not because he never lets go, perhaps, or just that it's called something else. Something changes, and because you just look at history, every empire has fallen. We've been going strong for hundreds of years.
Yeah. What is interesting is you look at there's two things that have happened. There's COVID-19, there's the civil unrest, and then you still have, in November 3rd, you have a very controversial, very emotional, heated election, which probably no matter who wins, there's going to be revolt and fallout and protest and violence. So it's there. I almost feel, as sadly and holding my breath, that even worse stuff could be coming in the next couple of months, and that to me is a frightening thought.
Yeah, it could be. It probably is. We're not even exact. We're just shy of halfway through this year. And again, it's going to be challenging. It's whatever we haven't addressed is going to come up. And instead of being anti-Trump and, he's horrible, I'm like, I now realize he is the ideal person to be in charge so that all this festering crud can come up and be dealt with.
Our last podcast, you talked about the modern mystery school that you had some training in, and that came at right about the right time where you were able to release, I think, a demon that was kind of imprinted on you, on your DNA or something that had caused a lot of the darkness in your life. How has that helped you this year and in helping your clients so far this year?
It's helped me incredibly so. So this was truly an evil, a demon that was in my lineage, and to heal it, they went back through my ancestry to find the first person in my lineage who attempted suicide. And it all just been passed on. So that had clouded every decision I've ever made in my life. Even at times I wasn't actively suicidal. Like, I've never had a 5-year plan. I don't have a great 401k. I never thought I'd be alive. Those big, long future things never mattered to me at all. And now in this time, the world is on freaking fire. And I'm surprisingly upbeat. I'm engaged. I'm not wanting to just check out. Wow. And that's the kind of thing that is like, wow, it's amazing. Because I certainly had periods. I think I've had periods of, a year, even 2 years without a suicidal thought at all previously. And then, oh my God, something would happen and it comes back. And for me, it was usually triggered by circumstances. It was something seemed so scary, so challenging that I would default to like, screw it. I'm checking out. I'm out of here. I don't care how this movie ends. I'm ripping up my ticket and I'm leaving. Right.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated now. I have this stronger ability to just witness and really step back. And that's really helped me and discuss racism. A year ago, maybe even 6 months ago, I couldn't talk about white privilege. I couldn't see that. I'm like, oh, wait, now I get it more. And there's still more for me to get, but I can talk about things without being triggered, without being defensive, without being afraid that I'm wrong, saying the wrong thing, and that this will all be a downfall. On YouTube, a video I made like 6 years ago, it's called The Best Way to Die. And it's really just like 30 seconds long. And I called it that because that's the kind of thing I was always searching for. And in it, I say, I've been researching and, I know how you feel. And let me give you the benefit of all my research and save you some time. And I say, give old age a chance. And it's huge. For years, it was like 50-50s. People going, aha, thank you. This is what I needed. And, F you suck. I hate your guts. Yeah. For the past 3 months, it has been like 6 comments a day, all hating me and furious. And people are saying, I'm going to report you to YouTube, really? For not telling me how to die. I was like, oh my God. And it's brutal. So
clickbait, Andy. God, right?
Yeah. the way it's the pandemic, the economic downfall and fear, and now the Black Lives Matters and protests and rioting, all piling up. And yeah, I don't think we're done with the pileup. I don't. It does seem, wouldn't be surprised at all if there's a second wave. I saw in the news today talks of another shutdown coming as they fear the second wave of the pandemics and overwhelming the hospitals and such.
Yeah.
So it's a scary time. But what's different is it's scary for everybody, right? The economy is nonsense. The government just decides, let's print more money and give people some money, right?
Yeah.
And we're just, let's make trillions of dollars. So it's all just on our agreement. So if I can't pay my mortgage, well, no one's going to come buy my house. If a business can't pay its rent, well, no one else is coming to take that business spot. We all just, look, no one can pay. It's like everyone's just going to take a pass for a month or two. So that's what's kind of amazing to me. So there's this, people can tap into a support. Like for me, it was really, dealing with mental health challenges. There's isolation. I feel alone. Nobody knows how bad I feel. There's nobody that gets going through this. Nobody gets my pain. Everybody gets your pain now. And especially Black America might finally be feeling like people get their pain now.
Guilty as charged. For a while, it was like, if there was a doctor friend or whatever, no, you're doing fine. How can this affect you? I mean, there was this blinder aspect, and you see something like that, and it looks like it would be 50 years ago. I mean, it's insane that that image of that, man masquerading as a cop, stepping on someone's neck for 9 minutes or kneeling on someone's neck is just a look on his face and the victim's face. It's horrific. The other side is the looting and all that stuff, and the gentleman, a Black police officer in, I think, St. Louis that died, 77 years old. That was also equally sad. So, yeah, a lot of people are curdling now, Andy. There's so much bad stuff. They just try to avoid it and not pay attention to what's going on. And what do you think the danger is in that?
If you keep putting your head in the sand, someone's going to pull it out. So certainly you don't have to be obsessive about the news, but to be in touch enough to get it, to know what Black Lives Matter means, and to get that saying all lives matter is like, why is that like seen as an insult? What does that trigger in people, right? So there's a willingness to look at your own thoughts and I realized I am very fortunate. I was raised by kind of like hippie-ish parents. When I was just a toddler, my parents, they were college students. They got pregnant. They had me, and they were working at like low-income camps and working with inner city youth. And I was, as a baby, I'd been told all these stories. As a baby, I was like tossed around from drug dealer to drug dealer and unemployed person to unemployed. And I was like, it didn't bother me. So I've always been comfortable with how anybody looks. And my mother was a school teacher, and she taught in kind of a poorer part of town. And I always thought where people lived, it was much more just economic. I didn't get that it was racial. Yeah. I just thought, we have more money. We live in this part of town. Other people don't have as much money. They live in that part of town. But I would always go like on field trips she taught 4th grade. So for me, from like 1st grade to 7th grade, I'd go on their field trips and I'd visit her school. And I always ended up like making like a Black kid best friend for that year, for that while. And once we got to high school, and this one guy, Andre, we saw him like, oh my God, we run over like, hey, and we're hugging. And then we're talking to each other, and we stop, we look back, and we just see one half of the field is all his Black friends. And on the other half of the field is all my white friends. And they're all just staring at us. And that's when we realized, wow, we've done something here, man. I'm like, all right, well, I hope to see you later. And I never saw him again.
Is that like in the 80s, like
the
1980s? Right? Yeah, okay, yeah. That's like Leominster, Massachusetts, right? Yep. Kind of the middle part of Massachusetts.
Yeah, so it's always been there, not aware of it. And I've had the pleasure, I've been to like 16 different countries. I've visited Africa twice. Everyone I ever met is friendly. Everywhere I go, people are friendly. And so I find that racism is rooted in fear. It's rooted in isolation. So if you were brought up by people that never had a friend of a different race, or a friend of a different color or different religion, then it's kind of taught to you that that's not something to do. And there's something wrong with them. And our current administration is definitely someone that blames. And I was a blamer for a lot of my life too. I blamed the world for my suicidal ideation. I blamed others. You made me mad. You made me depressed, right? And it's easier to blame. It's easier to call ourselves a victim. It takes courage. It takes bravery. It takes a willingness to be wrong, to really look at yourself, to do that inner work and grow as a person, to grow spiritually. I forget who said that, but you can be right or you can be happy. And I've got to be right. Yeah. And I think a lot of politicians, they've got to be right. And like, no, I'd rather be happy.
Right.
So I'm willing to be wrong on like anything. I'd be like, oh, well, if I'm wrong about this, fine. I'll find out.
Do you think the United States has, because I guess we always think that we're very advanced. Do you think the United States has a bigger problem with racism than most other countries? Or do you think it's just our opportunity to kind of be a polarizing point of view for the world to make things better, hopefully? What's your thought on that?
Well, I would say the statistics, the things we've seen, shows us we have a bigger problem. I think we've been in denial more about slavery and the after effects, and we're also such a heavily armed country, right? Yep. So another place where races aren't treated as well, it's not as easy to kill them as it is here.
So my mother was part Spanish. She was born out of wedlock, and she was adopted. Her mother gave her up for adoption, and then her mother died, got hit by a train. This is the point of this is so she was adopted. She was Spanish on the Spanish side, and her family on I think the Scottish side or whatever. When her mother died, they didn't reference my mother in the obituary, like she didn't exist, so that was her type of racism. And she grew up kind of in a loving family, and she had good high school, and then as she got older and was part of our family later on in her life, I could kind of feel the sense of kind of the anger and the abandonment and kind of the isolation that came from being going through that as a child, not being kind of loved and accepted for who you were. And I think that in her also instilled some kind of self-doubt in some of us as we grew older. So it did have this ripple effect. And my point is you mentioned people don't talk about slavery and the ripple effect of all this time. I think it keeps going. It's like an energy wave that keeps going until it's flattened out, and just ended.
Yeah. So it's very much like I had this personal experience of I've had this demonic energy that wanted me to have suicidal thoughts in my family, passed on, and I finally did something and was able to clear it. So being captive, being a slave, not feeling like you're free, the shame, the grief, the misery, all of that, it is passed on. All these things are carried in the DNA, they're carried in our cells, and they are passed on. So, to say, well, slavery was hundreds of years ago, these people, no one around here that's upset, they weren't slaves. But the pain, the scars, they carry on, that energy, that weight keeps going.
Afraid of starting your own podcast? Buzzsprout makes it easy. In fact, it's so good, they've already helped over 100,000 people launch their own podcast, including me, Robert. Buzzsprout has helped me get onto many great platforms, including Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and more. You also get a great-looking podcast website, audio players that you can drop onto other websites, detailed analytics to see how you're doing. They're addicting, trust me. Also, tools to promote your episodes, like sound bites to give your listeners a tease of what each episode is about. Buzzsprout is not only a user-friendly platform, they continually provide useful videos, articles, and tutorials to help you hone your podcast game. To start your own podcast and get a $20 Amazon gift card, follow the link in the show notes. This lets Buzzsprout know that we sent you and helps support the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Buzzsprout, the best place to launch your podcast. Don't be afraid to start today.
You graciously mentioned before I got on the call that we were going to do an Akashic record reading tonight in real time, which is kind of cool, and I look forward to that. But before we transition to the Akashic records, what's your suggestion for people to deal with the rest of the year? Are there a couple tips that you would have for people to kind of take a deep breath, be in reality, but not be overwhelmed by it, and to kind of make their mark in their own way?
Well, reality is so much perception, so we can all have distorted realities. What I would say is, this comes from talking about suicide prevention as well, but silence kills. So if you're living alone, isolated, talk. If you have friends you can trust, if you have a group, a church group, a men's group, a therapist, anything like that, use it. Use those tools. If you have an employee, what do they call them? EPA?
EAP.
Not an
EAP.
EPA. EAP, thank you. If you have one of those at work, take advantage of the resources that you have. And, I've been having a series of open conversations about race on Facebook, and I keep encouraging people to do the same. Reach out to someone you don't know well and ask, how are you feeling with all this? Is there something you've never been able to tell a white person if you're white, or is there something you've never been able to tell a black person if you're black? Be willing to have uncomfortable conversations, and we'll all get through this much easier. If we all stick our head in the sand, pretend everything's fine, again, you're going to get dragged out of the sand.
You know, that living in silence by yourself, I think I recall you saying same thing as suicidal tendencies. When you're alone and you're in silence and you're not sharing things and talking to people, that's your biggest danger zone, correct?
Yeah. Our emotions are meant to be felt, and emotions are processed easier by sharing them. When I see people, when I talk to a client or even a friend, I'm like, how are you? Really? Right? Not just, how you doing? Oh, fine. How's the weather? No. When I ask, it's like, how are you? Really? And give the space. So much pain can be lessened by just another human being willing to listen. If a friend, a coworker, a family member comes to you and confesses, wants to unleash themselves, wants to tell you what they perceive as horrible idea or thoughts or feelings, you don't have to say anything back. It's just stay there. Hearing something and going, oh my God, and running away. That's the fear I always had. If I tell someone what I'm really thinking, they're just going to like, oh my God, Andy's crazy. I'm getting out of here. So just listening, just staying there. Today, it can be online. It's even easier. It can be in person and 6 feet apart with COVID, right? Whatever it is. But we all have the ability for free with all these different technologies to connect with anybody in the world. So I really recommend people take advantage of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't even know how they feel, or they're afraid if they're honest and they feel that they're perceived as wrong, they'll be demonized. So that curve to have people talk and disagree, and then, I'm going to unfriend you if you don't agree with me about that. I think they worry about that. That kind of culture, divisive culture, has been going on, and I think there's got to be a way to kind of bridge that.
Yeah, that's why we need to talk. No argument has ever been won in social media contents and comments, right? It just isn't. But if you say, could I talk to you? Oh, it changes it. Like the anonymity of the internet, even if it has your picture there, it's easier to be mean to people because like racism is centered on dehumanization. Mm-hmm. And every culture that dominates another culture for any reason dehumanizes them first to make it easier on their psyche. So when you engage with someone one-on-one, you recognize the humanity again. I'm sure everyone has the experience either in their own lives or hears someone say this like, oh, you're one of the good ones. Or I got nothing against black friend. I have a black friend. I know one. So I'm not, my wife is Jewish. And she always was told like, you don't act Jewish. And you're one of the good Jews. And she's like, what the hell does that mean? And so these are all the ways that we're all racist. But it's like, well, but if you know someone, if you make a connection, well, you're not with them. Yeah. There's this fear of the other. And we're in a time where it's easier to look at people as others than it is to look at them and go, us.
Yeah, it's a hard time looking in the mirror for all of us. A lot of us think we're self-critical and aware, but it's difficult to take an even deeper look. So I do a segue to Akashic records, because we talked about it our last time, but because this is a great tool for this time as well. Have you had clients? Has your Akashic readings gone up more since this bad mojo's been going around? Has it been a good tool for you to help your clients and get them grounded and help them decide, how they need to move forward?
Yeah, it definitely has. And to be honest, when this started, I was afraid of clients. I was afraid of people booking this, like even in April, because like, oh man, I don't want all just these questions of why is COVID here? What does this mean? Are we doomed? And I was like, but every person's just been asking personal things that matter to them. It hasn't been the big picture and explain the meaning of this to me. So it's been interesting. But yeah, everyone has gotten such a great sense of relief and more of a peace and a calm from their record sessions. I'd say that.
So why don't you give us, re-educate us again about very quickly what the Akashic records are and kind of what are the right questions to ask and what people can hope to get out of searching their records.
Akasha is a Sanskrit word for primary substance. And the Akashic records are a recording. It's a vibrational recording of everything your soul has done. And they're really alive. There are beings that maintain the records. And your records are being written in every moment. Every new thought, every new action, everything you do is written into the records. It's like it's the universal Google or the Library of Congress for you. And the power of going and asking questions is with everything you've done in one place, it can help you heal something from the past. It can help you make better choices about what's next, your next best step. It's a great place for affirmations to just get confirmation of what you feel drawn to. And they can explain, well, oh, you love that. Yeah, because this is what you're naturally here. And this is part of your purpose. And oh, cool. So it's very confirming. If I was ever doing a session with someone and I said, if this doesn't resonate with you, then something's wrong. like where I'm not really in yours. Something's wrong. This really, because it's talking about you at your soul essence. It cuts through the personality. It cuts through, what you want to hear. There's never bad news from the records. It's always supportive. I speak of the records as kind of this plural thing, because often my experience reading them for people is that I'm in the center of a room, and I'm surrounded by beings that usually speak in like a chorus all at once. And sometimes one being will just speak up and take the lead. And often that will be someone that's passed over to be a human that knew the person, the client that's asking questions. But it's ascended masters, it's angelic beings, it's beings of light, it's some people's energies that have walked the earth. People come and go, or beings come and go as you ask questions. We all have guides that are with us from birth, and then we also have guides that come and kind of check up on us, and archangels that are, if you're painting, like, the archangels of beauty and expression of painting, like we'll check in your space, like, that's lovely, and we'll support this, and then boo, they're gone. And energy is constantly moving, and this energy that we can feel and talk about, a lot of it is other beings, other dimensions, other realms. I used to really believe that I was just this meat suit, and I wanted to be dead because I just wanted everything to stop. But we do go on. We are more than this human experience, but the records are all about the human experience. So it's everything you've done, every thought. And again, it's to help you make the best choices, is to help you not beat yourself up over why you did something, why something was done to you. It's a place of tremendous healing potential.
So a question I have is alternate universes. If there are many different versions of me, are there many different versions of the Akashic records? Or, I imagine if you went tonight and looked at it for me, and read me, it would just be this version of me. But if there are multiple versions of us, and I don't even know if you believe in that, is there a record for every different version of us? And are there multiple Akashic records, or is it one central repository, but it just has different folders for different versions of us?
Ask,
really? Okay. It's like, I'm going to ask. Okay, cool.
Yeah. Instead of me, like I have like a theory of mine, but I've never asked that. I don't recall anyone asking that. So yeah. Ask.
Okay, cool. So what do we need to do to kind of do a read on me with the Akashic records right now for our audience to listen in?
Cool. So all I need is someone's permission, which I have because we're talking, and someone's full legal name. And I access the records via a prayer. Part of the prayer is out loud. Part of it is silent. Especially since we're on the phone, I always let people know that just because I'm quiet means I'm still here. There's nothing you need to do. There's no preparation on your behalf. Once the prayer is complete, I'll say the records are open. What would you like to ask? And we take it from there. And then there's just a really short play, just kind of close out the space and let the records get back to record keeping, and let me pull out of that energy and go on to my next thing. But so yeah, if you're ready, I can start the prayer and we can dive in.
Love it. You have my permission. Thank you.
All right, cool. And so we do acknowledge the forces of light, asking for guidance, direction, and courage to know the truth, as it is revealed for our highest good and the highest good of everyone connected to us. O Holy Spirit of God, help me to know Bob in the light of the Akashic records, to see Bob through the eyes of the lords of the records, and enable me to share the wisdom and compassion that the masters, teachers, and loved ones of Bob have for him. The records are now open. What would you like to ask?
Are there different versions of myself, like in alternate universes? And if so, does the Akashic records have a different folder or different file on each of them?
We will not confirm nor deny if there are multiple universes, which is a theory. Each universe would have its own version of records for your soul's adventures in that universe.
Do the Akashic records go back before this life, or is it just kind of a blueprint of the life I'm in right now?
It is your soul's entire journey.
And am I able to ask how many lifetimes I've had before this?
You can. So let's ask.
So let's ask. How many lifetimes have I had before this?
731 is the very specific answer that's showing up.
Wow. Yeah, I always felt I was an old soul. Okay, great. And in this lifetime, recently, I've gone through a big transition the past 18, 20 months. Emotional, physical, at work, everything. It's just My ex-wife told me she wanted a divorce about 18 months ago, had to keep it quiet for a couple months with the kids. Then I went this whole fear of not just having my family break up and my kids potentially to be raised by another father at some point, but also the whole fear of financial, being at my point in life and that I have to keep a job and am I going to be broke and all that stuff. My question with that long kind of setup is, have I done the best I can and the best steps according to the Akashic records during these past 18 months to move myself forward?
So from the records perspective, you've always done the best you can. There can be no other way. If it took you 10 years of banging your head against the wall to figure something out, well, that's the best you could do. So there's no judgment. There is not like there would never be a case of like, oh no, you could have fixed this all within 3 months, not 18. Like it's just not like that. How you got somewhere was the best way you could get somewhere. By you living your life, you are on your life's path. You are on your purpose. Even if you kept making the wrong decision until you finally learned it, however times it took to learn that, that's your path. It's not as if there is some predestined time frame that you are ahead or behind on. There is some major lessons that you sign up for to get covered, and ideally you get them all covered, but it's not that, oh, by age 13 you would have this insight, and at age 25 this event would happen. It's much more organic because you always have free will. You can ignore every intuitive hit, every synchronicity that says to go in one direction. You can choose to ignore it over and over and over and over until you finally do agree. And then, great, that was your path. There are no wrong choices because they're all your choices.
So I've had 731 lives. Am I a slow learner, or am I doing things right, or am I on the right path?
Well, again, you can't not be on the right path. And you don't have repeated experiences because you've done something wrong. It's usually that souls love new experiences. And you really have a curiosity and an attraction to newness, to the unexplained, to things you can't quite put your finger on. And that fuels you now. And it's been in the occult, the metaphysical, all these things have interested you many times. So there can be a predominant theme, but it's not as if if you had figured it all right the first time, you wouldn't be on Earth now. There's always a choice to come back here. Before incarnation, there are options, I'll just say. And everyone alive now chose to be here at this time, knowing how scary times would get. And your own kind of personal roller coaster of growth and change and challenge, you're ahead of the planets, right? So and it's fantastic because to have them be at the same time is even scarier and more traumatic for individuals. But so you've had your personal challenge and growth and kind of rebirth already, and you could have more. Humans have the phrase of a dark night of the soul. And you can have an infinite number of dark nights of the soul. And it's not a punishment. It's not from doing things wrong. It's how deep do you want to go? How much do you want to truly understand, comprehend, and experience that you are divine, that you are here as a creator God? Life isn't happening to you. Your life is your creation. And when you realize you don't like the creation, you have the full power and ability to create something new.
So, question about I have to, I'm glad we're taping this because I'll be listening to this several times because there's a lot of great stuff coming out. The question I have is my ex-wife. So look, it's amicable and there's a part of sadness that we weren't as close, or I wasn't as close as we should have been. But I feel like she is an important person and like she should have been the mother of my children and all that stuff. Was my ex-wife kind of one of my close circle of soulmates in prior lives? Because it seems that way, even though this life might have been a disappointment.
I'm glad you used the term soulmate. That's something we will expand on. You can have many soulmates. You can have a soulmate that matters and is magic, and it's for a weekend. right? It doesn't mean that was a mistake. But there are multiple souls. There are groups and teams, if you will, of people agreeing to support each other. And your spouse, now you could have had past experiences, and it could have just been a neighbor. It could have been the friendly eye. It could have been, but you're traveling the same circle a little bit, and you agree to support each other. So even if a primary relationship ends, that support is still there. When you as a soul ever loved another soul, you love them forever. That connection is always there, even if it's not manifested, even if it's not shown and expressed in societal norms with an officially sanctioned relationship. So that's what soulmates. There isn't just a one. It's not a one and done sort of thing. Now, as far as if she was past experience is that, yeah, lots of past experiences. Nothing's really standing out to say that you were definitely married before. But again, there's a connection, there's a concern, there's a compassion, and it goes beyond a marriage.
Okay. I'll keep asking questions until you tell me to stop it. Have I met my true soulmate, my true love in this lifetime, but it just didn't happen, and it was just from a past life? Or is there someone that's a very strong presence from my past lives that I've met in this life, but I just haven't recognized it?
Boy, there's an element of yesness to all of those questions. Let's see if I can take that apart. So again, as we said, there's not a single soulmate, and you are not destined to be romantically alone the rest of your days. There are more soulmates in your future, right? That it's there. It's not written on this date and at this time at this age you should be with someone, but you're not meant to live alone. You're not meant to be in isolation. There's a really bright passion of romance in your heart, and it's going to be expressed again. It's going to be received again. More importantly, it's going to be received again. Let's see, is there anything more specific they can dare say about that? Yeah, so it's not as if, again, it feels like there's a bit of judgment in your asking of, have I missed something, and is there someone I'm supposed to, and it's just ease into it. You have every right and expectation and ability to love again, to have a romantic relationship, to fall in love, and to have people fall in love with you. It's all there. Just because one relationship ended for whatever reason, it doesn't mean the end of relationships. Again, unless you do so by choice and you decide to shut down. And again, from our perspective right now, your heart is alive with passion. There is a strong an ability and both a desire for romance.
So one question I have is, my youngest daughter is autistic. And so as part of that is autism, she has a social awkwardness and she misses social cues, but she's actually I think she vibrates on a higher level. She's beautiful. She's happy. She has a short memory of bad things, and which is great. I've always wondered if I've had that same an aspect of autism in me, in this iteration of me, where I miss social cues and where maybe I don't process things socially as well as I should. And I know that has never been those triggers, or those on the spectrum autism thing hasn't really been identified until more recently. Could the Akashic records tell me, is there any part of me that's autistic, or am I just imagining that?
Yeah, there's no sort of confirmation, or it feels more around the label and the wording. Okay. So humans diagnose far more than the records ever would.
That's great.
Right? So there's a lot of labeling, so there's nothing to dub you with as something wrong or judgmental. But as you spoke of your daughter, yeah, her for lack of a better word, her autism is a gift. Yeah. She is special. There are young ones that are ahead of the curve. They're ahead of the evolution. They're ahead of the Great Awakening. They're ahead of the enlightenment of the masses. So she's missing social cues that are obvious to society today, but she's picking up others in far excess. She's receiving far more information than is appreciated right now.
So a couple questions as a parent. what can I do? I have two daughters. So one is autistic. Her name is Emily, and she's 12. And my other one is Carly, and she's kind of quiet, very smart. They're both beautiful and awesome. What can I do? I don't think I've done quite enough yet on the parenting aspect. What can I do to be better as a parent? Is there any guidance that I could get from the Akashic Records?
It's, you know this, but unconditional love. Love them, whatever their choices. Love, love, love. And it doesn't mean you have to love what their choices always are, but love them. Unconditional love for that soul. Unconditional love for that being. And one thing that's often tough for parents is letting children make mistakes. Right? Experience is the greatest way that human beings learn.
Especially for autistic child, by the way. You want to protect them so much because you think they can be taken advantage of. Both parents feel that way.
Yep. Well, one way to learn to not be taken advantage of is to be taken advantage of.
Yeah, sadly.
And it's just, it can be sad, but it's in so many situations, preventing another human from hitting a rock bottom. To realize, wow, I'm not going to do it. You're preventing another human being from learning lessons if you overprotect and are always there to catch, right? And that can be challenging, and especially your youngest one.
Yeah.
Children are here to teach more than they're here to be protected by parents.
Okay, that's a tough one,
right? and follow their lead. If you're concerned, ask them. It's really on the emotional, mental plane. Don't treat them as children. Ask them, am I giving you enough of what you need? Am I smothering too much? What do you want Dad to do? Right? Really communicate with them. They're ready.
Awesome. I'm going to end with 4 questions, and they won't be long, I promise. So one is, I made the movie Blessed probably 6 years ago, and that caused a lot of angst in my marriage. Also financially, I got ripped off by the distributor. They kept all the money, even though it didn't make a ton, but I never got paid. I couldn't afford to go after them legally, at least not yet. And that affected my relationship with my family too. Was making that movie a good thing, or was that at my path at that time? Yeah. Should I have done it at that time, or should I have delayed, or what's your thought of that?
Your creative expression is crucial to your well-being. So it was important, and you know this. It felt important to you, so it was important.
Yeah. I will tell you,
you had to do it.
Yeah, you're right on that, because my mother was passing at Alzheimer's. She had forgotten me, and I thought in 20 years this could be me, and I wouldn't have left anything behind. So I said, no matter what, I'm going to bite the bullet. I'm going to take the financial risk and do it, and that was the impetus for that. So it's interesting you said that. There's been one
So look at it. So you, again, going back to, you are a creator God. You had an intention, you had a goal, and you did it. But then you waste energy. Oh, why did I do that? Shouldn't I have done that? Right? It's that living in the moment means trusting what you feel in each moment, creating what you want to create, taking the actions that you're driven and called to. That's a life well lived.
Excellent.
Creativity is important to you. Creativity without expression, it's deadening.
Okay. One other thing. This has happened to me on the paranormal side, and it kind of scared me, and I'm looking for some validation on it. So I made the film Afraid of Nothing, paranormal documentary. And as part of that, I was exposed to haunted houses, possessed a Ouija board, theoretically, which I had bought. I kept it in my trunk for a while. I had a bunch of weird EVPs. One night I was in bed, and my ex-wife was next to me, and I was awake. It was in that time before you're still fairly wide awake, but you're maybe getting a little tired. I literally felt my ribcage almost opening, and I felt something leap out of me. And then I looked at her, and I saw her eyes fluttering. I don't know if it went into her or what, but I felt it was one of those surreal moments. You're like, did that happen? Nah. And I was worried. I said, is that my soul that left me? Was that a dark entity? I'm just curious. Does the Akashic Records have anything about that point in time? Was there anything I should be worried about, or is it just something that just kind of left me?
You did pick up entities that were not good for you. And it's more than that time. You have on numerous occasions picked up. You've picked up evil at various places, and what we mean by evil is anything that stops your progression, anything that is not for your growth, right? And is there anything now? Is Bob dealing with anything in him now? Yeah, there's like, you've got some residue. There's not some, there's not an entity actively in your space at this time, but there's definitely almost like energetic and emotional scar tissue.
Yeah. It's interesting. I started my day with gratitude probably about a little over 2 years ago. And I do that every day. And I actually, when I'm feeling negative or have negative thoughts, that's what I pull out, and I'll say it multiple times a day, and that helps me. So it's interesting.
Going into, if you're ever again going into places where you know something bad has happened, when you're going into some dark energies, there are just more protections that you can take beforehand. And that's what we would advise.
Okay. I have, like you mentioned, this love and interest in the paranormal, but it does have its dark side. This will make my last question. Is it okay that I once the film was done, I started doing this podcast, and it will eventually have more offers from me to go do ghost hunting with people. For example, I was at the Conjuring House a couple months ago, which is in Burrisville, Rhode Island. Is it okay? Is this something I should stay away from, or is it okay to follow my interest in the paranormal and continue down that path?
We fear at sometimes you don't take it as serious as it is. And again, there are precautions, there are protections, as simple as prayers, amulets, carrying things that mean something to you. It could be your children's photos, carrying things you love on your body when you go into darker spaces. They want. You would be best supported by things that help your aura stay intact, to have an energetic circle of armor around you, and there are a number of ways to do that. But that's it. Yeah, there's part of how evil and darkness tricks and gets its way is by convincing you it's just silly, it's just fun, it's just something interesting, and it's not.
Sounds like I'll be taking a visit to the Circle of Wisdom in Andover. That store where you taught at, because they probably have a lot of the good stuff. All right, this is great. Andy, thank you so much. It's like 50 minutes in. I want to give you some time at the end to talk about your stuff, your show, Real Men Feel, and kind of other things that you're working on. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for doing that.
Okay, let's just close out this session. Give me one moment. I would like to thank the masters, teachers, and loved ones for their love and compassion. I would like to thank the lords of the Akashic Records for their point of view. And I would like to thank the Holy Spirit of Light for all knowledge and healing. The record's now closed. Amen. The record's now closed. Amen. The record's now closed. Amen.
Well, that was great. Thank you so much. I've always wanted to do that. Thank you for doing that for our listeners here as well.
Yeah. Now you have.
So let's go back to you and the rest of this year. What do you have going on in terms of for Andy Grant? What's going on in your life in terms of I know you're a really creative guy too. So what do you have going on for you that you're working on that you have some passion for?
Yeah, I have a number of partially written books. I often, before COVID hit, I was scheduled. I teach how to self-publish. I teach self-publishing for heart-centered entrepreneurs. It's a class which I often taught at Circles of Wisdom. I was scheduled to teach it at New Hampshire Metaphysical in New Hampshire, as the namesake. And COVID hit, and that couldn't happen. So we converted it to an online class. People saw I was doing this online, and now it was available online. So I actually taught it 5 times.
Wow.
In March. I taught 5 times. It's a 3-hour class. I taught it all on Zoom. And that's when I learned about Zoom fatigue. I was like almost fainting after 3 hours of just straight teaching, because it takes me more energy to stay upbeat and energized sitting in a chair than it does to walk and pace a room. So it was bizarrely draining to just sit down and teach. But it reminded me of all the half books and great ideas that I want to get. So my goal is to publish at least 2 more books this year. And I also have a number of online classes. I want to do something around men. I've done 191 episodes of Real Men Feel, and there are at least 50 helpful, meaningful books in all of those transcripts of all those shows. So I'm looking for ways to get that out. But yeah, creativity never stops. I'm continuing my training with the Modern Mystery School. I have years to go in the path that I'm on to become a full-fledged ritual master, to be trained in exorcisms. I'm discovering just more and more from my experience.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty. And again, even just 2 years ago, that's just movies. That's silly. Yeah. But I keep like, nope, this is real.
Can I ask you something about that? Because
yeah.
we have a mutual friend, Brad Little Frog Hudson.
Right.
And Brad has a different approach on versus the Catholic, tarnishing the power of Christ compels you and the religious aspect of it. He thinks it's more of love and kind of surrounding in a bubble of love and moving it toward the light. Which side of the fence are you on when you're going to start going toward your exorcism training?
Both sides are correct. There are stages of evil. I'm just making this up, but let's say it just, he's dealing with demons 1 through 3, and they respond to that. But there are more powerful energies that, rate on the 5, 6, 7, 8, and it takes more work. There were international teams of people working on the demon in my lineage around the suicidal thinking. And I could feel it. Like, that's what blew my mind. I could tell when people were working on me. But there was I don't even know how many people, but there was teams in Taiwan and teams in Japan doing prayers and rituals on my behalf. My pictures and information were on temples around the planet. And this was going on for 4 months, and I could feel it. I want to write a book on this, but there's so much I can't explain. And it's going to be like, then a neat thing happened, chapter 2.
Did you feel it when it was finally left?
Oh, yeah.
Like I felt like my reverse punched in the stomach type of thing, my rib cage opening, something flying out. Did you feel it when it finally left, or was it just gone and you're like, oh, it's gone?
No. So the final ceremony happened at a graveyard in Connecticut, where my great-grandmother, who died by suicide, it was her gravesite, and they could do this final access of the energy of the demon there. She died before I was born, and I never met her. I had to study this.
Yeah.
So there were 3 other people with me, including a gentleman that had flown in from Japan to do this, and rituals, prayers, lots of things happening. Everyone had a role, and I swear, out of the corner of my eye, I kept seeing people run by, and there was no one there. I asked someone after, like, hey, when you were reading that part, you kept saying my name, right? And he's like, no, never. I was like, geez. And what part of building up this, I wasn't allowed to eat meat. I wasn't allowed to listen to music until afternoon. All these like weird things to prepare me. And
you're a huge music guy. Everybody should know. You're a huge music
I always have music playing in my head, and I've realized that like the lyrics in my head are often mean something to the conversation or whatever I'm doing, so it's always been a cue. But I also realize I love Metallica, and almost every song is "Die, die, die, die" is the chorus for so many songs. So it broke me of that. But when we're at the cemetery, and I don't know when it's going to be done, I don't know what we're doing. I'm just doing my part, and suddenly I had an old Kiss song in my head, and I was like, "Hey, that's the first music in 5 months, I think." And then Hidetto came up to me and said, "It is done." I'm like, wow, Kiss knew first.
I was going to say, I was thinking, Andy, I was like, you're not an Air Supply guy now, are you? Or
nope, but I enjoy silence. Yeah. I will just sit in silence often. I appreciate trying more things. So I listen to classical, enjoy it. I listen to typical meditation, new agey music. But also I have other friends that are really into just newer metal, and there is so much like metal music from Europe, and they're Kabbalists, and it's metaphysical, and it's really cool. And I recently had a Real Men Feel guest on, Johnny Crowder. He's the lead singer for a metal band called Prison, and they have songs called Mental Health and Hallucinations, and it's all about the things that he's battled with are in the music. And so I've enjoyed them too. But yeah, there was a while, and I was afraid. I thought, I can't listen to music again. It's bad. It's evil. Like, is there truth to the PMRC? And was Ozzy and Judas Priest really evil? And I was like, I had to question everything that I've ever enjoyed. But once evil was out of me, I could appreciate everything anew.
Oh, that's great. Let's talk about let's close on your website, because if someone wants to have an Akashic reading or talk to you about energy healing or whatever, if someone had a suicidal thought, you're always available. You're on Facebook for someone to you drop a line, because your biggest thing is don't have people silent. So how do people get a hold of you? What's the best way?
Yep. So theandygrant.com is my website. It covers everything I do, from the podcast to Akashic record readings. You can go straight to theandygrant.com/talk, and it just will pull up a calendar, and you can just schedule a conversation with me. And it's not tied to any one thing. It's just a chance to two human beings to talk to each other. and me to learn about you. And if there's something I can help you with, I will. If it's just suggesting a book, if it's pointing you in some other direction, that's what it is. But I'm also real accessible on social media. I'm on Facebook, on Instagram. Search for Andy Grant. Search for Real Men Feel. That's everywhere too. We're on every podcast platform there is, as well as YouTube and Facebook Watch.
You're an author on Amazon too, correct?
Yep. I've got 5 books on Amazon. More to come. My book specifically around suicidal thinking is called Still Here, How to Succeed at Life After Failing at Suicide. And it's really everything I wish I knew when I was like 17 and 18. It's full of the tools and techniques that really helped me turn myself around. Even pre-mystery school, you don't have to go that far. Like it talks about gratitude and affirmations and perhaps like you, things I made fun of for years before I actually tried them and found that they made me feel better.
Yeah. I wonder how many past lives you've had. I wonder if you're an old soul too. Interesting. Fine. Next time you do it, let me know. All right. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I loved it. This was it's always a pleasure talking to you. You're so well-spoken. You're so positive, and you get such a good heart. And I appreciate all that you do, not just being a guest here, but helping people through tough times, through your own experiences and your own growth. So thank you for being with us today, and blessings to you. Be well.
Yeah, my pleasure. And, it's all of us or none of us.
True. Cool. And right after we finished, Andy could not remember a thing that we talked about on my Akashic Records reading. So just like with psychics, once they do a reading of you, it's out, in and out afterwards. So when he listens to this, Andy, it'll be interesting to revisit what we talked about. I really appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Afraid of Nothing podcast. Please subscribe and like us on Facebook. Until next time, stay scared.
Hey, you're still here? Great. Then why not listen to another episode? Visit afraidofnothingpodcast.com to peruse all the shows. That's afraidofnothingpodcast.com. And while you're there, click the coffee cup icon to buy me a coffee and leave a review. I'll give you a shout out in an upcoming episode. And the world will know how swell you are.